We've been waiting for this legend to appear in our Chaldea ever since he had his legendary moment in Shimosa over 2 years ago. The question is, can he possibly live up to the hype? Let's find out. Starting off with Muramasa's stats, he's doing very well for his NP gain due to the number of hits on his Quick Arts Buster and his 5-hit extra attack. He's got very high attack among all the 5 stars, and his HP is nothing to scoff at either. Starting off with Muramasa's first skill is a skill that every Emiya seems to have, which is a rainbow buff for 1 turn. But unlike Chloe and Emiya's, which is just a rainbow buff and that's basically it, this gives him increased crit star gather rate for 1 turn, and a Star Bomb, which helps him to deal quite a number of crit damage. And his second skill helps with that even more, which applies invincibility for 1 turn, increases own critical strength against invade or invincible enemies, and increases own crit star drop rate, and this is the crazy one, it already increases his crit strength even further. Now, the crit damage buff you get normally is 100%. That is the same crit damage buff that comes from Merlin's Buster Crit skill. And Muramasa, keep in mind, can buff all of his cards to that equivalent in combination with his first and second skill. So he can produce astronomical amounts of damage in 1 turn with just this skill. Then we come to his third skill, which is a 50% increase in his NP, but not only that, it applies a unique flame buff to him, which increases his own NP gauge when normal attacking for 3 turns. And how much NP does he gain with every regular hit? 10% NP. Which basically means you could do a Buster, Quick, and with the extra attack, which also counts, you would gain automatically 40% NP. Which pretty much means if you're buffing him up right, and you get a Brave Chain with him that involves 1 arts card, you can probably refund from the start of his NP all the way into the Brave Chain, and then use your NP the next turn. This skill is ridiculous. So in combination with all of this, Muramasa is not just a good looper, as you've probably heard, but he is also an amazing crit DPS for whatever you need. Seriously, the amount of damage he can do on his cards, whether they're arts or not, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, in terms of append skills you would want to focus on, it's a bit of a toss-up. If you're struggling to loop with him properly, then you may want to go with the second skill. But if you want to deal more damage for boss fights and such, you may want to go with the extra attack boost. I would personally recommend the second append skill so that he may loop even better. Muramasa has quite a number of interesting passives, including Debuff Resistance, Magic Resistance B, Territory Creation, which increases his arts card effectiveness, as if he didn't need that, and he also increases the critical strength for all allies on the field, which is a very unique passive, and applies Special King buff to self, because screw you Gilgamesh, I guess. Now, his NP is quite the loaded one. First off, it increases own NP strength by 10% for 3 turns, and removes all offensive buffs from all enemies, and deals defense ignoring damage to all enemies, and his overcharge increases the arts card effectiveness. Basically, this means for 3-turn loop farming for an AoE NP, this is basically giving you everything you would want for that. Now, at NP1, Muramasa's NP is not going to deal a crazy amount of damage, so if you want to loop with him in challenge quests and such, or 90 plus level farming, you probably want to get NP2. However, considering how stacked this year is in terms of valuable servants, that is a hard choice up to you. If you plan to farm with him a lot, go for higher NP levels, but if you just want him on your team and are fine with having to use someone else for higher level farming, then just get NP1. That is all you need. He is strong enough as is. Muramasa's Bond CE is continuation of what happens after. Increases all allies' critical damage by 25% while he is on the field, which is actually quite similar to Chloe's Bond CE of all things. However, I would not recommend you use this because Muramasa wants to deal as much crit and NP damage on his own as he can, and your allies having that much extra crit damage isn't going to matter nearly as much as Muramasa's own crit damage. In terms of CEs you want to give him, for farming I would recommend a max limit broken Black Grail to help with the lower end of his NP damage, if he's NP 1. In terms of other general use, if you don't have that, any CE that gives him arts buff, NP damage, NP gain, and at least 50% starting NP, that is what you would want to go with. However, if you are also using him for a crit DPS against bosses, I would also recommend arts CEs that also provide crit damage buffs, because you're going to want to be dealing insane crit damage to the bosses. Now, in terms of other teams you would want to run him in, it's obvious for a farming setup you would want to run Castoria, and if you can pull it off, you would want the Mystic Code that gives you NP gain and NP damage. But if that isn't enough, you can always swap out for either a Nero Bride or some kind of 50% NP charger. Honestly, Abigail might be able to help in this regard too. Seriously, Abigail is a pretty good support unit when it comes to NP charge. Now, besides AoE farming setups, it may surprise you to know that Muramasa isn't purely tied down to just art supports like Tamamo and Castoria, though I would argue that's one of his best synergies. But because of his overall kit, and the fact that he can deal such ridiculous crit damage with any card, I would argue that he actually has synergy with Buster as well. You can run him in a Merlin team, and because of his ridiculous crit damage and his third skill giving him NP charge with every card he uses, he will run just fine there. His NP may not deal as much damage, but here's the thing with Muramasa, most of his damage is absolutely going to come from his crit damage and not so much his NP. Which is why I'd argue you don't need higher levels of Muramasa to make him work, because higher NP levels aren't going to increase his crit damage. So yes, you can run him in Buster and Arts. So to answer an earlier question, is Muramasa worth all the hype we've been waiting for? Yes, He absolutely is. You may have heard he's a great saber farmer, but he's not just that, he's a boss destroyer with his overall kit. And you can run him in a number of teams, including Double Vitch of all things. Seriously, I've seen some degenerate setups of Muramasa kicking the crap out of some Lost Belt bosses with a Double Vitch setup. It's ridiculous. Muramasa is definitely worth your quartz, and if you get him, you will not only have a powerful AoE farmer, you will have a powerful boss destroyer for both Buster and Arts. He definitely gets one of my highest recommendations, and I can definitely say I severely underestimated him until I got him myself. So, what did you think of this review? I tried to go into a little bit more in depth when it comes to his team and his synergies. Did you guys appreciate that? Sorry if I didn't mention command codes, because I typically don't focus too much on that myself for my own servants, unless they are one of my favorites. I just typically don't use those very much. If you liked this content, consider giving it a like and subscribe. I previously did a Iskandar review if you want to see that. And I'm currently thinking of doing a Squirtoria review or a how-to video for how to do NP gain for dummies for arts looping. Thank you so much for your time, and have a fantastic day. Later!